Welcome back to the CheckSwing Podcast, y'all, with myself and of course Coach Santa is in the building over there, still rocking his Eagles Super Bowl gear, loud and proud, loving the birds, loving what we got going on here. Welcome to the show, y'all. Congratulations to the birds once again. It is the CheckSwing Podcast. It is Tuesday night. It is 8:30, and I got to start off the show by asking my people how they been. So, Miguel, Coach Santa, how you been?
Been well, sir. Just living, just living the Eagle life, and you know, just enjoying it.
Many things to enjoy. Many things to enjoy, indeed. Um, so I want to put something out there real quick because I know you've heard it many times because you've mentioned it to me before. But for those that enjoy our show and support our show, we appreciate it. We appreciate y'all and continue to support us. I just want to let y'all know something. His name is Santa. Santa, right? Not Santana, not Santos. It's Santa, y'all. Because when people talk to me about the show, like, yeah, because Santana said, I'm like, who's saying? Oh, you talking about? And it's like, oh, Santos said, no, it's not Coach Santos.
You know what? You know what's funny? When I first started the job that you have, what was it, like 25 years ago, whatever. The first thing I had to do was do a presentation, or not presentation, but a training with the secretaries in the admin building, right? And I remember we had a break in the action or whatever, and I'm coming back down the hallway. You know the hallway where the last office that's to the left when you go out the rear of the building.
Yes.
Okay. So that that was a classroom, whatever. And I remember that when we were coming back from break, there was this young lady. She shall remain nameless, but she was a secretary of one of the schools, and she yelled at the top of her lungs. She was like, "Carlos! Carlos!" And I'm like, she's like, "Yeah, Carlos, hi. Hi." So I come back into the office and she's like, "Why did you hesitate answering to me like me?" And I'm like, "My name's not Carlos, it's Miguel." and I'll never forget. She looked me dead in the face. She said, "Oh, you look like a Carlos."
Oh my Lord.
I was like, I didn't have a leaf blower. I wasn't in the kitchen making food. You know what I mean? Like, what?
You said, I will now call you Uncle Carlos.
Well, thank you, my lovely niece.
Shout out to your niece. What up, niece? Thanks for checking out.
She's the first baby I ever held.
Oh, isn't that precious?
Yeah,
isn't that precious. We got a fun show to talk to go through today. We have a few things we can talk about. This past weekend, you may not have known. It's kind of crazy. You may not have known, but it was NBA All-Star Weekend, and a lot of people. We'll get into that a little bit later. You also have something very interesting going on that I have. I haven't focused in on it, but I've watched some things of it. You got the NHL Battle of Nations going on. I think that's what they're calling it. I should have double checked that, but it's almost like an Olympic style event that's going on there. So they got that going on. You also have the spring training has started. Pitchers and catchers reported a few days back. Spring training baseball season will be getting underway soon. That means the weather will be getting warmer. Thank goodness. So we got some things that we want to talk about there, and a few other things as well. But first thing we're going to get out the way, right? Because, of course, the last two times we were on, we're talking about, the Eagles going to the Super Bowl and we're going to win. Last time we're talking about they won the Super Bowl and all like that. Um, and I already told you all the things that we want to talk about today, but we also going to talk about the parade a little bit. Let's talk about the parade because, of course, we don't have too many here in Philly, right? We've had three in my lifetime. I don't count the Sixers in whatever year that was because I wasn't old enough to remember. I ain't know what the heck was going on. But the Phillies and two Eagles. So that's what's up. I've seen the Eagles win two Super Bowls. At the time, I never thought I'd see them see one. But um, we're gonna start with the slideshow there, Coach.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, so we're gonna bring it to the stage. What we got here? We got some smiling Eagles fans down here. What we got?
So the two Eagles fans, that's actually my niece. That's Dara on the left and the right, with a stranger because of course in Philadelphia nobody's really a stranger. We're all family and whatnot.
Question yourself.
Um, oh, this was a shirt that's on sale. Sorry, I didn't know how that got there. My apologies.
Okay.
This was actually a screenshot that I took from my office. That's actually Jason Avant. He was in the crowd, working the crowd a little bit with a Randall Cunningham jersey, taking autographs and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool. And this is a scene from some of the fans on the Parkway. Yeah, we're better than you. This was pretty creative in the luchador outfit. I just thought that was pretty cool.
But they put their own street signs up there calling it Frankfurt and Cotton.
Yeah, because that's usually, for those that don't know, usually whenever there's a championship, it's usually what uh, Broad Street, Market Street, City Hall, and then in the city it's usually Frankfurt and Cotman. That's usually where the big, if you watch Channel 6, you'll see, live Frankfurt and Cotman, they're spilling out in celebration and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And these are holding back on having their baby, so the
Mhm.
contractions can wait because, of course, you can control that thing, right? Yeah. Then they became some of the memes that were online that were absolutely hysterical. I saw this on, on quite a few. Them dangling the Kermit the Frog,
Oh wow.
and
Mm.
what's it? Is it his wife or his girlfriend or whoever he's sleeping with? She posted today that Philly has a bunch of trailer park trash people for hanging the Kermit the Frog. So obviously we've struck a nerve, which
What we do.
we
What we
do. And of course, the funeral homes around town they celebrated by issuing a rest in peace to the Chiefs.
mm.
This was a little, I want to say, kind of awkward because of the creativity in it. The Eagles fans were cooking Patrick the pig. Kudos to them for getting the likeness of the ears and the fro.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought it was a little awkward. I
I
ain't know
know.
how I felt about that. I ain't know how I felt about that one. I
Yeah.
don't
And a lot of Cooper the Gene fans.
know. Yeah, he said he had a lot of "Will you be my Valentine's?" Going through the parade.
Yeah, one thing that was funny was there was a video of everybody chanting for Cooper, and it was actually Reed Blankenship, and he's like, "I'm Reed, I'm Reed." And this picture is the one that I was gonna say my niece took that one, so she gets the street cred for that. And of course, Howie with the yeah, and I was like, did you actually see the video on it?
No, I didn't. I
So
only heard the when the guy said it at the podium.
yeah, because when I saw that, when he comes up and I'm like, he sounded like he was already smashed. But I think he was turning around in the thing. You see Nick Sirianni going like this, and you just see the can go, bloop, and he just collapses into the thing. I thought it was quite funny. So, um, yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So
Good
One
time was had by all. Good time was had by all.
now the other thing, the last thing I'll show. So you and I saw the parade online, and you and I both were kind of upset at the fact that there was a lot of dead air at times when they were speaking, and I was like, they can't possibly all be cussing, right? So if you want to hit the next video with the
fucking champion.
We apologize. Of course, we're on live TV, and we apologize for the profanity.
You guys are tough, you guys are resilient, and you guys know how to fucking fight.
And we apologize again.
I'm a fucking champion.
Oh, this was the shorter video. There was one that actually showed all the cuss words, all the times they cussed.
Well, we apologize for that for anyone that might have sensitive hearing, sensitive ears. We apologize for that. But you know what? That's how adults speak sometimes. Yeah, great time was had by y'all. Great time was had by y'all. Let's let's have another one next year. I probably still won't go, but let's have another one next year.
But you know what though? I'm okay if they don't win next year because the dynasties today aren't like 3 or 4 in a row. It's like one every like 2 or 3 years. That's comfortable for me.
So I actually have, and I've spoke about this before on other shows. I actually have a kind of a criteria, maybe one criteria, but I have a criteria for dynasty.
But is it for the current dynasty or all dynasties of all time? Because I think dynasties today are different.
So let me explain. So if we're talking about baseball, if we're talking about basketball, and for all intents and purposes, let's say hockey too, right? You have to win 3, but in that time, you have to win 2 in a row. You have to go back to back. In football, I can give you kind of a pass, but it's hard to do that right now when you just had Tom Brady and then win how many ever back-to-backs they won during that time. And then the Chiefs just won back-to-back, and they've won 3 during that time and went to, 4 or 5 or something like that. So
you know it's funny though, like as great as Tom Brady was, as those Patriot teams were, it's amazing that they never were able to win 3 in a row.
I know.
That's
I know.
amazing.
It seems kind of crazy. It seems kind of crazy. So I mean, is my criteria a little too like for me? You have to win 3, but you have to win 2 in a row. At least 3, but you have to win 2 in a row.
So here's my take on it. If it were 10 years ago, I would absolutely agree with you. Because that was my criteria. You have to win 3 in a row. You know, because the 93 Phillies team, for instance, they didn't win the World Series, but I thought that team was a fluke. And usually to confirm that you're not a fluke, then you go back to back years. And that team never made it back. So that team was a fluke.
They didn't even get to the playoffs.
Right. They didn't make the play, right. And they were in last place, even worse than the 80s, right?
They didn't come close.
But like, let's say a team like the Yankees, for instance, in the 70s, they lost in 76, but they won 77 and 78. So that's kind of a dynasty there. Although they fell off for a couple of years and then came back in 81 and lost.
Well, hold on. Let me just want to be clear on what you're saying. You're saying, say what you said about the Yankees again.
So the Yankees went to the World Series in 76, 77, 78. That's 3 years in a row. But they lost the first one and won the next 2 because they got Reggie Jackson. Okay. And I agree with you. So prior to that, the Oakland A's with Reggie Jackson won in 72, 73, and 74.
They three-peated?
They three-peated. Okay. They're actually, and I believe they actually are the second to last team to three-peat. The last three-peat was the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
So those would technically be your last two dynasties.
Well, I
If-
didn't say it had to three-peat. I didn't say that.
Back to back, right.
I said they have to win 3, but 2 of them need to be back to back.
I got you.
That's my You don't
Yeah,
have to win 3 in a row.
Yeah, I think that I think your criteria is more reasonable because I think 2 in a row is feasible. It's that third one that's like that's the one that's
Mhm.
the hardest. And you saw case in point with the Chiefs. Because
Yeah, like
I think the Chiefs are so they're so banged up, so messed up by this, they may not even make the playoffs next year. Like that's how I think they got okay, they're the Chiefs, so they'll make the playoffs. But to do damage with an aging Kelsey, they have several free agents, as every team does. They have several free agent holes to fill. They got to do something with their offensive line because the changes that Andy Reid made obviously caught up to them in the Super Bowl. So
yeah, and they had an injury too, if I'm not mistaken. They had an injury that came about. I don't forget who it was, but they had an injury on the offensive line as well, where they had to put in a backup, or whatever the case may be. But to get back to it, like it's funny because this Chiefs team, by my standards, is a dynasty. I mean, a lot of people call them a dynasty, but I it just feels weird to call them a dynasty. Like it just feels weird because I don't know why. I don't know why it feels weird to me. Like they won 2 in a row. And maybe I'm putting that first one like kind of out of my head. Like maybe that first one, because not the first one, but the first one of the back to backs. Maybe
right,
I'm putting that out of my head because it was against the Eagles. I'm kind of like
right.
trying to forget about it. But it just seems weird that they are a dynasty. They are a dynasty. So the Patriots were a dynasty. Your Lakers, the Kobe Lakers were a dynasty. The Yankees dynasty. But now there might be somebody that says like, and nobody really ever says this, but the Eagles early 2000s were an NFC East dynasty. But nobody's gonna say that. You know what I mean? Because nobody really cares. I mean, they care, but they don't care.
Right.
It's all about Super Bowl. But somebody said that they think it's a bit unrealistic, and I guess they're talking about my standard. I think you got to win back to back. Like if you win one, if you win 3 and there's no back to back in there, you won 3, but you're not a dynasty.
So let me ask you this. Let me make sure I'm correct. The Red Sox, right?
Mm-hmm.
Considered pretty much of a dynasty, but I don't think they won back to backs, if I'm not mistaken. But
You're talking about. So I think what you're saying is they kind of took the same team in all those championships, right? In a sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, but they weren't a dynasty though. They were a really good team. But they weren't a dynasty, to me, by my standards. You talking about with Pedro and
So
and all that?
yeah, but let me make sure that let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so from 2004 to 2018, they won 4 World Series. They won in 2004, then in 2007, then in 13, and then in 18.
Not a dynasty.
Okay.
That was a really good team for an extended period of time, but it's not a dynasty.
I got you.
Dynasties are championships.
Back to in a clutter. I got you.
Yeah, dynasty is domination in the club. You know what I mean? It's in the cluster.
Right.
The Chiefs.
So the Eagles win next year, you consider them a dynasty?
No, I consider them back-to-back champs.
See, that's a tough standard.
But that's what they would be though. They were just back-to-back champs. They lost in 2 years ago.
Right.
So you can't even put that in the conversation. You can't put a loss in the conversation of a dynasty. In that case, are the Buffalo Bills a dynasty of the 90s because they went to 4 straight, so they're AFC dynasty.
No, but I mean, we're talking about winning championships. They didn't win anything, so
Right.
that takes them out of the equation.
So, and if the Eagles win next year, they're back-to-back champions, but that doesn't make them a dynasty.
So you're saying, hold up, let me make sure I'm.
Cowboys in the 90s were a dynasty.
I was just gonna say because I know they did win one back-to-back, but
They won 3, and 2 of them were back-to-back. That was a dynasty.
I'm just trying to find one more way to spit on Cowboys fans today.
The Broncos then went on to win back-to-back, a couple years later. But the Broncos wasn't a dynasty. They were just back-to-back champions. And I still say they would have lost to Minnesota had Morton Anderson or whoever it was made that field goal. At least one of those field goals. And what are you looking for right now?
No, I was checking to see the Super Bowl wins of the Cowboys because even
standards are crazy. Well, I invite you. Let me know your standards. Like I want to know. Like what's your standards for a dynasty?
I mean,
not crazy, but
No. Like I like the standard, but I think you can go with the back-to-back if they win 2 in a row and they're still winning or going to the championship after that. I still think, and I'm just thinking because of today's standards, it's impossible to win, as you can see, 3 in a row, right? In any sport.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
I think part of it is because you're playing more games. There's more travel than there was in like the 70s and the 60s, so it was a little bit easy. Like I think the record for most consecutive championships was in baseball. I know it was the Yankees. I think they won something crazy like 9 in a row in the 50s. The Celtics, I think, won 8 or 9 in a row with Bill Russell in the late 60s. But again, it's like when the furthest you have to go is like St. Louis or Minnesota. It's a little different,
And sometimes you're going on buses and not airplanes too in some of them cases too.
Right. And if you notice, like every year there seems to be like every Super Bowl team has like 1 or 2 like major injury or like they're missing a player due to injury.
Oh yeah. Health is definitely part of the equation in that. But I have a hard time. Like, let's say the Eagles go to the next 7 Super Bowls, and let's say they just win next year and make it back to back, and then they lose whatever the math is, the next 5. I can't call them a dynasty because they lost. I can call them an NFC dynasty because they won that championship, but I can't call them a NFL dynasty because they were not crowned. So you have to be the champ. You have to have the crown to have that dynasty crown.
So let's say, what if they win 3 in a row and then lose the next 4?
Then they were a dynasty for those 3 in a row. They had that 3-peat. That was a 3-peat dynasty. Dynasty was over in those next, whatever it was, a 4 in a row. The dynasty was over then. They probably referred to it as the dynasty, but the last 4 they lost. So they're not, that 3-peat was the dynasty. But they could never get back to that mountaintop for the next 4 years.
Gotcha. Okay. So the Cowboys won their first Super Bowl in 71, right? Lost the conference championship, then lost the Super Bowl in 75, right?
So you said they lost in 71, lost in 75.
Right.
Okay.
Won the Super Bowl in 77.
Okay.
Lost the Super Bowl the very next year in 78.
Okay.
And then didn't go back until 92, where they had the back-to-back in 92, 93, and then in 95, and then nothing since.
So was there a question in there? Because
no. I was just thinking of because I was trying to see if they had gone back to back 1-1 loss one, and they did, which was 77-78. So that matches your criteria. They were just a great team in the 70s, just not a dynasty. The dynasty came in the 90s.
Cowboys fans, your team was not a dynasty in the 70s. Your team was a dynasty in the 90s. I'm sure y'all knew that already, though. But I just wanted to have it on record from me. Just that's for y'all. So here's what she said. Let's see. We got so I think 2 for 4 over the duration of a small window of time, which I guess would be 6 years, is reasonable given the rate at which other teams also grow. So I'm wondering what she's saying. 2 and 2.
If you win 2 to 4, if you win 2 to 4, right? If you win 2 to 4 over that duration of time,
I might consider if you go back to back and lose and then go back to back again, I would consider that a dynasty.
But the key component is that there has to be a back to back in there.
Has to be a back to back. Yeah, that's right. Okay,
I got you.
I'm proving my own point to myself like a dummy.
No. It's because again, like I would say I'm agreeing with you because again of the standard today, it's just totally different than you can't do the same things that you and plus a lot of players historically have hidden injuries and did things to their detriment. Like it's funny because Billy Martin is one of the greatest managers ever. If you ever look up his 30 for 30, it's freaking amazing. Every team that he coached, he always took them to the playoffs, and usually by year 3 he would have gotten to a bar fight with a reporter. I think one time he would always come in hungover, drunk, or whatever. Usually by the 3rd year is when the teams break up. But I forgot the point I was making.
It happens. Sometimes when you get to that age. Well, why you think about that? I'm gonna I'll put this in real quick. Can I speak today? Statistically speaking, the likelihood of a team today winning a Super Bowl or even a World Series 3 times in a row. I just want to be clear. I'm not saying, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying you have to win 3 in a row. I'm just saying you have to win at least 3, and 2 of them have to be back to back. That's what I'm saying. She said, I appreciate the losses if a team comes back harder and better as a result.
Which is actually
nice.
Which is actually what happened.
Yeah.
The Eagles, but the Eagles had to get thoroughly embarrassed last year. They had to get toasted the way they did. So,
you think the Eagles win the NFC East next year?
If everything stays the same as far as their personnel,
well, we already know that's not, because they've already lost a few coaches.
I'm not worried. You know what though? I'm not worried about the offense, because if Vic Fangio has the same defensive players, the players on defense, because let's be real, the defense won that game.
Oh yeah,
hands down. If that stays the same, I don't care what the hell happens on offense, to be quite honest with you. Because if anything, how many offensive coordinators is that for Jalen Hurts now? 7, 8, something like that.
Since he's been in the league, it's been a different one since he's been in the league every year.
It's been a different one since he's been in college.
Yeah, since college. So what are you, 3 years, 4 years in college?
He should be able to run an offense by. He might not even need an offensive coordinator at this point.
He knows all the offenses. He knows all the
offenses. But you see what happened. He had the last Super Bowl. He had a different offensive coordinator, different quarterbacks coach, and the same thing happened this year. So I'm not worried so much about the offense. I'm really not. It's the defense, which we saw what happened when you don't have a great defense. So it's like, that's my main concern, and I'm not concerned about that. When you have it's like 6 or 7 of your starters are not even in their mid-20s and they're healthy and they're smart and they're great athletically, I'm okay. So
Yeah,
I think they need.
I think they got to get Zach Bone wrapped up and probably Josh Sweat. I'm not sure what they're going to do about Slay. You know, he wants to play one more season. So will the Eagles grant him one more season with us? You know, run it back. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Um, let's shift gears real quick, just a little bit. Spring training has begun. You know, Coach Sanders and I are both baseball coaches. We're going to talk about a little bit of the spring training, and then of course we're going to talk about the NBA All Star Weekend and a couple other things. But spring training has begun, Coach Miguel. The Phillies last couple years, disappointing endings to the season. You know, they lost in the World Series, then they lost in the NL Championship Series,
Division.
NLCS, and then they lost in the NLDS
Mhm.
last year. Kind of reminds me of the end of the run with Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard and Chase Utley and all them boys. How they won the World Series, then lost the World Series, then lost in the championship, then lost in the divisional round. It feels eerily similar, except for they just didn't win the World Series yet. So they still have to win the World Series. Can the team do it this year? Like, is there any young guys that you think are bound to come up in any situation? Because the Phillies usually do it later in the season. But how are you feeling about the Phillies this season, Coach Santa?
I don't know because the Phillies historically don't like to bring up their players too soon. You know, even if you look at like Ryan Howard and Chase Utley, they literally waited towards the end of a season where they couldn't, you know, have their major league service start too soon. So, you know, which they're well within their right to do. But I do like the acquisition of Jesus Luzardo from Miami.
Mhm.
You have another quality lefty, and I think we kind of lacked that the last couple years. Sanchez is coming on. I just need this. Ranger was a concern for me. Suarez. He was a big concern for me because
After the injury,
after the injury, like his pitches, his innings were limited. His outings weren't. They didn't have the same punch. You know what I mean? He was throwing a lot more pitches. Um, I liked what I saw from Sanchez. I just think, you know, they. I would like to see the starters throw a little bit longer. You know what I mean? But I get it. They're young, you know. And then you have what's his name, Mick Abel, who's been doing pretty good in the minor leagues. Um, what's the rookie's name? The one that had the, say again.
Aiden Miller.
No, not him. I would have used him as trade bait, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think of he had a UCL tear in his arm. The pitcher,
Um,
Painter, Andrew Painter.
Andrew Painter. Yeah.
So he probably won't come up until like he's 25, 26 because just I'm always burnt by what they did with Dominic Brown. You know what I mean? I think that they waited so long to bring him up. And remember, he had that one season where like he hit 25 home runs, and then I think the rest,
half season.
half season, excuse me. But it was one of the greatest half seasons ever in Phillies history. And then he wound up hitting like what 30 more the rest of his career. So I just want the Phillies to kind of start like, you know, trusting in their youth, which they did, which is the reason why Girardi got fired, because he didn't really want Stott and he didn't want, you know, some of the other guys, you know, coming up or whatever. So and then I was reading today, Stott was actually dealing with a nerve issue I think in his back or his neck, which explains why he wasn't effective at the plate as they thought he would be. They thought he was going to grow. Other than that, they traded away a shortstop to get the pitcher from the Marlins. That his name was Jesus Caba. He was projecting to be like the next Francisco Lindor, but again, he's like 17, 18. So you probably won't see that till down the line. But I just don't like giving up like real young talent that early.
You won't see him until 2030 something.
Right. Like I initially did not like the trade when we traded Alfaro to get JT Realmuto. And then I look at his stats, like he still hits pretty good. He has a great arm, but he hasn't played more than 50, 60 games in the season, which either means he can't hit right-handed pitching for crap or he's been injured. So it's been a combination of the two. So and now Bermuda's on the north side of 30, and he had knee issues last year, and usually when you start having knee issues as a catcher in your 30s, that's usually the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and which brings me to my next question for you is, I was reading that JT Realmuto might be playing some left field this year. He's never played left field in the majors. He's only played catcher and first base. Him playing left field this year to try to kind of save his body. Is that a good idea? I mean, and I'll throw this in there. Buster Olney, ESPN writer, has ranked Realmuto as the 7th best catcher in the majors today.
I would agree with that based on what happened last season, because he tailed off. He tailed off, and him having that surgery, that procedure, and not really hitting well in the playoffs, and towards the end of the season, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, the catching position, it's you wear the tools of ignorance. You know what I mean? You have all this equipment, and you always get hit in the spot that's not covered. And I know that they've done things functionally with the catching position, like the one leg stance, the one knee stance, to help kind of alleviate. You have different equipment than when you and I were growing up, so there's different things that help in prolonging a catcher's career. But I still think it's too many games in a season. Even if you took 10 off, I think that would be better longevity wise. But yeah, I agree with that. I think he's tailed off, and we'll see what'll happen. I like the fact that they called up, or they're talking openly about bringing back Rafael Marcán, who's a switch hitting catcher, and for whatever reason doesn't hit well in the minor leagues, but he always hits well in the major leagues. So it's like, okay,
that is kind of weird.
You know what I mean? Like, he's a 300 hitter, I think, lifetime in the bigs in like 4 stints, but in the minor leagues he's like a 240 hitter. So,
but he's a little older, isn't he?
Not much older, because who's the backup now?
Late 20s, right?
Say again.
Late 20s, right?
At least,
because he's around the same as JT. JT is I don't know how old he is, but how do you feel about him playing left field? Like, do you think that's a good idea? I mean, left field has been really a project for the Phillies over the last few years. You had Schwarber out there, then you had Rojas out there platooning when Rojas really should have been in center. You had Marsh out there platooning. You had what's my man's name that came from the Orioles in the trade last year?
Austin Hayes.
It's been a project.
Austin Hayes, yeah.
Austin Hayes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Putting him out there. I mean,
well, here's the thing though. Between him and Schwarber, he's like 2 times faster than Schwarber. So that's where I will put some of my trust in. He's faster. You know, he's one of the fastest catchers ever. Arguably, you know, he's a catcher that can run, hit field, and steal bases, which you don't really hear too much of. I would prefer him to play first base, just because that's usually the natural progression of a catcher in the last days. But because of that speed and, you know, he's a smart baseball player, so I would be comfortable with him in left field. But I just think it's like you're going to go through a lot of growing pains if you start now.
Yeah, it's kind of late in the game for him. And I'm not saying he can't do it, but it's late. That's a whole different read. That's a totally different read.
Yeah.
Totally different read.
Now I read that they were talking about Schwarber at first base, which he has experience in. He did it with the Cubs and he did it with the Nationals. So I'm okay with that too. Now you're talking about what he do with Harper.
Put him back in the outfield.
It's a natural thing, right? Natural progression of things. He should be fully recovered from his, you know, the ACL. But I think you lose a little defensively at first too.
You do, and because we don't really have a first baseman. When you think about it, we don't. I mean, I'm sure we have one somewhere in the system, but nobody that you would just put up there to replace anybody. But speaking of Harper, Buster Olney has him ranked as the second best first baseman in the league. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Behind Freddie Freeman. Yes, Freddie Freeman is the best.
Yeah, I agree. That's how much of a leap that he made from transitioning to first base from 23 to 24. I was surprised at it, but then again, what people forget is that when Bryce Harper was drafted, you saw the Freudian slip. He was a catcher. He started out as a catcher, and he pitched.
That the other day,
right? It's like so. This all comes natural.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was just a matter of time before he would adjust to playing first base. Because remember, I think the issue with him was in the beginning was picks. He had trouble with picks in the very beginning, and then last year, no issues with that at all. Was it last year that he made that catch in Cleveland where he fell in the stands? Was that last year?
Was that last year? I think that might have been the
year before.
It might have been last year. I thought it was the year before, but it might have been last year.
But yeah, even that's once he was able to get the position down, then he was able to take more chances and be more aggressive.
Yeah.
You know, so but yeah, if you put Schwarber there, you know, is his glove the same as it was before? And he didn't have the greatest glove, but he wasn't like, you know, a stick figure either. But
so if you think about it, what we're really telling people is you might want to check out some of these preseason games to see what's happening. If you're a fan of baseball and you're a fan of the Phillies, you actually might want to check out some of these preseason games the way you kind of check out some of these Eagles preseason games just to see who's playing what positions and how they're looking at these positions. Because we just mentioned about 3 different people that can possibly play first base for the Phillies. 3 different people that could possibly play left field for the Phillies, not to mention the people they already have that do play left field. And then we didn't mention Alec Bohm, who's still on the team that has played first base for the Phillies. So, you know, there's a I think Castellanos can play first base too, if I'm not mistaken.
He did with Detroit so Castellanos actually started as a third baseman.
Okay, it was third base. Okay.
No, at first base. So he started with third base with Detroit with the Tigers. And then they bounced him between third and first, and then he moved into the outfield, and then he was traded to Cincinnati. And that's where he kind of stayed in the outfield, played some first and third, but primarily an outfielder. So,
yes, everybody's faster than Schwarber. But I will give Schwarber some credit. Schwarber stole some bases in the playoffs a couple years ago. I don't know how he did it, but he made it happen.
Dude, it was all about timing because I think he's surprised that like the catches every time they caught there, like, wait, he's not running, he's running. It's like, you know what I mean?
Let's talk about I'm going to talk. Well, real quick, you did put this in there. I do want to make the mention. Um, Next year, the World Series, the World Baseball Classic, will be played in March of next year. So just a couple years ago, you can remember the final out was between Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, who went on to play their final season as teammates right after that. Exciting stuff. It was exciting stuff. Um, so we'll see it again. And in mention of that, we're still going to talk about NBA All Star Weekend, but I want to talk about the Battle of the Nations from the NHL. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically it's a round robin tournament with four teams. You have how about I say Canada? You have Canada, you have the United States, you have Sweden and Finland, I believe. Please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that. I should have wrote it down. Um,
U.S., Canada, Sweden, and Finland, I think.
okay, so
And it's the Four Nations Face Off. That's what they're calling it. Four
Four
Nations
Nations face off. That's there you go. Four Nations face off. Um, so they're doing this in place of an all-star game, and it's like a 2 week span because the championship game is not till Thursday night. And it started like what early last week. But the it's replacing the all-star game, and it's also replacing them sending sending guys to the Olympics because they don't. See, I got something in my teeth and I can't. I'm trying to. It keeps messing with me. um, they don't want to send the people to the Olympics. They don't want to take that time off during the season to send their people to the Olympics and then have them come back and all like that. So they're doing this, and I think it's a pretty decent idea. It's exciting to watch because you're getting the Olympic style, world championship style competition in the middle of your season. Now, why am I talking about that? Because the NBA did something slightly similar, but the NBA has a big problem with their All-Star weekend. At one time, probably considered the greatest All-Star weekend in all of sports. With you had your slam dunk contest, your three-point contest, when all the people, all the stars competed against each other. And then you had the game where the guys competed against each other. And it's really just become, a shell of itself, really. They're trying things to entertain you, and it's a lot of it's falling flat on its face. Um, Miguel, I know you don't follow the NBA like you used to, so I'll just explain it to you best way
I
I
didn't,
can, real quick.
I didn't even know there was an All-Star game this
I
weekend.
know,
That's how
I know. I wanted you to hold on to that, but here's what they did: instead of having the All Star game like East versus West. They had 14, or they had more than 4 teams, but they had 4 teams play Sunday night in a tournament. There was a OGs team, which had guys like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, those guys. You had an international team that had guys like I don't know, Jokic that plays for Denver. You just international play. Any guys that are not born here could play on that team if they were voted to the All Star game, whatever. Then they had like a young guns team, like of rookies, and then they had another team. Anyway, but that's what they did. Then they played the 40, and whoever got the 41st won. So you didn't really have an all-star game, right? But there's been like mixed opinions about it. Most of them have been negative. A lot of people feel like you're slighting the fans because you're not really seeing the all-stars play. But then there's some people that are saying, well, the last few years, the All Stars really haven't been playing in the All Star game anyway. They've just been running up and down, just dunking and shooting threes. Let me ask you this, Miguel. The All Star, you said you didn't even know the All Star weekend was happening, which is funny because I said to somebody as well, I didn't know All Star weekend was happening until the Sixers played their last game one day last week, and he said, "Well, they're off until like the 20th for All-Star Weekend." And I said, "Damn, NBA All-Star Weekend is coming up. I ain't heard I've heard nothing. I've heard nothing." And At one time, Miguel, I'm sure you can attest to this. NBA All Star Weekend was like such a big thing. You couldn't turn on your TV or radio without hearing something about NBA All Star Weekend coming up. And you said yourself, you didn't even hear. I mean, let me play devil's advocate. You do live in a city that doesn't have a professional basketball team.
Correct.
That's about as far as it goes. Like that's about as far as it goes. Because you're still here about NBA All Star Weekend. I used to say that the Major League Baseball did not do a good job of promoting their stars in the game, and that has added to the downfall of professional baseball. Um, but the NBA is kind of following right behind because you, at one point, you liked the NBA game, but you don't like it anymore. You don't even consume it. You rather consume anything else but NBA right now. Can the NBA bring you back? Can the NBA All Star Weekend even bring you back? Would you even have been interested in anything? Maybe the dunk contest, maybe.
I think what's happening in sports when it comes to like these all-star games, right? You know, it was a big deal growing up. I think too, it has a lot to do with like overexposure. Because you can pretty much see a game anytime, anywhere. You go to MLB TV, you can watch a game anytime you want. But back when we were growing up, it was like we had what our home team, and even our home team didn't have like all of its home games like televised. Remember, there was Prism, so some of the home games were on Prism. You had to have cable, all that stuff.
Right.
So some of it just has to deal with overexposure. It's just too much to watch, and you can literally not watch baseball for a month and still be able to catch up with the whole season. I think there's too many games. I think there's too. I think
You're saying in all of sports, or
in all the sports, I think there's too many games. I think but of course, you can't. The owners are not going to give up any type of gate. Unless you add more playoff teams, which every sport is starting to do now, but they're not taking away the games. You know what I mean? When you have, and I know this is a real problem in basketball, where you have pretty much players don't play back to backs anymore, or they have load management, or and I think they had to have something in the last collective bargaining agreement, like you have to play a certain amount of road. I forget what the terminology is, but basically, you have to show up for a lot of games. You can't just take a game off just because. You have to have a legitimate injury reason.
right?
But I get it though. It's like it's a lot, especially that you don't, as a player now, you don't have to play injured like you had to back in the day. But even with the gimmicks with the All-Star game, like I remember I saw a video, there was an All-Star game in San Francisco in the 80s where they actually had a skills competition for baseball players. They had I remember I saw a video, there was a video of Benito Santiago trying to throw out a base runner in X amount of seconds, and I think he won it. And then I think it was Brett Butler or an outfielder, they were trying to throw from the outfield to home plate in less than one hop. Like it was actually really, I was like, wow, this is pretty good. The NHL used to have that skills competition.
Yeah.
That was actually really big. But I think some of the things that I think the problem is that they don't stay too long with what works, and they're trying to do the next thing without really listening to their fans on what is actually working. You know what I mean? Because it's like, what do the fans really want? Me and my buddies were, we play online games, whatever. We love playing online sports. But what we're finding is that we were trying to play NBA, one of the NBA Live, I think it was NBA Live, whatever the NBA game is. And in order for you to start the one game, I think it was like it was the one from like 3 or 4 years ago. You had to go through, how like some games they make you go through like a sequence of trainings or whatever. Like in this particular game, it actually took us to the agent's office. All right, you just got drafted.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's going through this whole storyline. You can't skip it. You got to go through it. And it's like, who asked for this garbage? Who literally asked for this garbage? So now you're being inundated with stuff that like 2 or 3 people asked for, and then there it is. Are you really listening to your fans though? So I don't know. I can't remember the last time I actually sat and watched any All-Star game.
Here's what I think, and to answer your question that you weren't necessarily asking me, I think the NBA is listening to their fans to a point. And what do I mean by that? The fact that they didn't have an All-Star game in a traditional sense speaks volumes, because the last few years the All-Star games in the NBA have been like pretty unwatchable. Right? Honestly, I'll say I feel like since Kobe stopped playing, since Kobe retired,
Yeah.
the All-Star games have been pretty blah, right? So I feel like the NBA is listening because they changed the format a few different times. But from just to echo what I was hearing people say on TV and radio today, a lot of people are saying it's on the players to actually compete in the game itself.
Right. Because just like you
just making it a glorified shoot around.
Right. Because you just said like after Kobe and them left, right? Because I remember there was an All-Star game where it was Kobe, it was Shaq, it was Iverson, it was Penny. Like you know what I mean? It's like I don't know who any All-Stars are now.
So yeah, I mean,
to me it's like it's like the same thing that happened to boxing. But I think boxing has its own issue in the fact that they just have too many damn titles.
Oh yeah, they have way too many titles.
Way too many titles for no reason whatsoever. But I
was gonna say I can remember when All-Star games coming up. Sometimes at a certain point, they would compete the whole game kind of, and then at a certain point it kind of got to, we're going to have fun for 3 quarters.
Right.
Or 4th quarter game on.
Right.
And that kind of ended when Kobe retired. You know what I mean? But the guys that are, and here's what happens. Here's the part where you got to say, you got to listen to your old heads, right? The old heads passed down to the younger generation, to the younger All-Stars. Look, this is how we carry ourselves. This is what we do.
Right.
I always think about the story that Charles Barkley always talks about, how when he was a rookie, Moses Malone was on the team, and Moses Malone had to tell him, listen, you this, you're that, this is why this is why that, and he had to change up. Old heads got to tell, like, if the old heads aren't competing in the game, the young stars coming up aren't going to compete in the game. Now, what was different this year with the tournament and the semifinals, you had the OGs, the Steph Currys, the Kevin Durant's, the Jason Tatums. You had those guys, Kyrie Irving. You had those guys playing against the rising stars. So when the game first started, it was kind of kind of going through the motions, but the rising stars came to play, and they wanted to beat the OGs. So the OGs had to play to win the game, and then eventually they did. But it added that competition. The fans want to see these all-stars compete against each other. They want to see that.
Right.
They want to see Kyrie and Steph Curry go at each other. They want to see Shaq and Patrick Ewing go at it in the you know what I mean? We want to see that type stuff. Real quick, a subject that I know, too bad Rob's not on today, but I know it's a touchy subject for Rob at times because it was, with Embiid. Kyrie Irving might be playing for Team Australia in the 2028 Olympics. Now, Kyrie was born in Australia.
Doesn't that make sense?
Just he was born in Australia. But he has already won a gold medal for the United States in 20 whatever the Rio Olympics were, 2016, I believe.
I think so.
So he's already won a gold medal with the United States, but he's looking to possibly play for Team Australia in 2028. So we have to keep an eye on that. I didn't realize he was born in Australia. I thought he was born in Japan, but I don't keep up. So, So this is one last thing, Miguel. Well, I you know what? I'll go to you stumping me because I see you put the thing up there, and I'm looking and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. Okay, a 9-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All Pro, a 1-time Super Bowl champion, and a Hall of Fame all 2017. Are we talking about? Oh man, I'm trying to. Oh, I can't think of his name. Lineman, offensive lineman.
You know it.
Wait a minute, he didn't win the Super Bowl though. What are the teams? Jason Peters.
Bam.
You know, I was thinking the wrong person at first, and then when I realized that person didn't win the Super Bowl.
But he did win the Super Bowl.
What up, Bags? Who won? Who we talking about?
Jason Peters. He gets the ring.
Yeah, he won the Super Bowl. Yeah, I know. What I'm the first person.
Oh, the person is there. Okay.
Win the Super Bowl. The first person I was thinking of was who was before Jason Peters? Who played the position before? And not Winston Justice.
Trey Thomas. Yeah.
Trey Thomas. That's what I was thinking of. Trey Thomas.
He was in the Super Bowl, but yeah, didn't win.
Didn't win the Super Bowl.
I met Trey Thomas once.
Oh yeah.
His head.
Get closer to the mic.
His head was too small for his body. That's all I remember. And he came with his son, and it was the reverse. His son's head was too big for his body. But they had the same sized head, and the son was like 2.
Oh Lord. Oh boy. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. One more thing that my wife was talking about how all these people need to apologize to Jalen Hurts. I'm like, look, if they start apologizing, they're gonna have to apologize to everybody that they have a wrong opinion about. And I was like, it's not gonna happen.
Right.
However, there has been some people talking about, look, y'all need to say something. And you know, somebody went public with it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this in there, Miguel. Pause.
It's Valentine's Day, so permit me a moment for a love letter. Philadelphia celebrated the Super Bowl victory of our beloved Eagles today. The team predicted to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs by so many experts, including the President of the United States, instead completely and utterly dominated them. This is par for the course for this team to be underestimated. A team that consists of a frankly special group of guys who have been consistently dismissed and discounted and derided. And for a lot of us Eagles fans, that is part of why we love this team so much. And it starts with Jalen Hurts, our star quarterback, the Super Bowl MVP. The University of Alabama and its alumni are all out there claiming Jalen. But back in 2018, Coach Saban benched him at halftime of the championship game in favor of Tua Tagovailoa. Jalen stayed at Alabama the next year as backup QB, but then after that, he transferred to Oklahoma so he could play. He was drafted by the Eagles in the second round, and that pick was trashed. Hate the pick, tweeted ESPN's Mike Greenberg. Don't get it at all. And the hate kept coming. Here's Chris Sims a year ago.
Chris Sims.
I think Jalen Hurts is also like the most overrated player in football.
Here's ESPN's Dan Orlovsky 5 months ago.
I think we've seen the best of Jalen Hurts. That 2022 season and playoff stretch, that's the high.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to recapture that.
Here's Orlovsky 9 days ago saying that Jalen Hurts' name does not belong in the same breath as Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen.
I don't think there's anything that Jalen can do to be in the conversation with those three guys as players.
Hot take about a guy who won the Super Bowl MVP, finished the game with 2 touchdowns. His 72 rushing yards are the most ever by a quarterback in a Super Bowl, Dan. Then there's Saquon Barkley. our amazing running back, whom the New York Giants not only idiotically let walk, the Giants let a documentary film crew for the show Hard Knocks capture this ignominious moment for history.
All right, so I just talked to Ed Barry, and I think just mulling over this, the right thing to do is let you test the market and see what your value is. The organization thinks the world of you and everything you've done.
I'm glad you captured that on film, because that's going to be the first line of your obituary, buddy. The Eagles, Howie Roseman, snatched him up, and more hot takes about Saquon Barkley followed.
The signing of Saquon Barkley is once again another indication that the Eagles panicked. Saquon Barkley never lived up to the second pick in the draft. He was overhyped, overrated, and the Giants even knew it by allowing him to walk out the building with nothing in return.
I tried to tell you, Eagle fans, you have that losing player, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a difference maker for the Eagles.
Oh, Nick. Saquon Barkley's season with the Eagles included 2,507 rushing yards, the most ever in a season, surpassing Hall of Famer Terrell Davis's 26-year record. Story after story like that of the guys on this team. On the Saints, Zach Bond was mostly limited to special teams and outside linebacker, and here he is intercepting the ball during the Super Bowl with the Eagles. On the Lions, some jerk on the team slammed Darius Slay as a major cancer. Slay came to the Eagles, and they voted this starter a team captain. Mekhi Becton had 2 rough seasons with the Jets after injuries. They let him go. He was picked up by the Birds. Here he is crying with tears of joy after the Super Bowl. There's a Jets fan in the studio here shaking his head. The Titans, A.J. Brown, a superstar with the Eagles. Here he is scoring a touchdown at the Super Bowl. And he is also, we should note, a champion when acknowledging and discussing his own mental health struggles.
What made you kind of come out and want to talk about that? I'm so sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. It's okay. Like I said, it was a dark moment, and it was a year ago where I had thought about, taking my life, and it was special to me because it just came with my heart that I wanted to share with others.
I mean, that is so special for a football player to acknowledge that publicly. And then, of course, last and certainly not least, our coach, Nick Sirianni, now one of the winningest coaches in the history of the game of football, criticized from the moments the Eagles introduced him in 2021.
He looked like a deer in headlights. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. He was mumbling his words. This was a horrible start.
Like a puppet. Like a puppet.
I don't know what you're talking about, Steven. Sirianni led the Eagles to a Super Bowl in 2022. The naysaying continued through last fall. Sports journalist and podcast magnate Bill Simmons, in September, just a few months ago, suggested that Sirianni's career was over. He wrote, quote, "I'm excited to hire Nick Sirianni for Ringer Pods in about 3 weeks. He'll be good," unquote. And the criticisms continued in October.
I feel like Nick sometimes doesn't get it.
Yeah, to me, I don't know if there's a wager you can place with our friends at DraftKings, but I think he's a borderline lock to not be the head coach for the Eagles in 2025.
Yeah.
And that's not making a prediction. They're missing the playoffs, making the playoffs. Like, he will not be the coach next year.
I will definitely take that bet. And somebody doesn't get it. I'll tell you that. Here's the thing. So many of the guys on this team, so many of the Eagles have been told, you're not champions, you're not excellent, you're overvalued. They've been shoved aside, they've been dismissed, they've been told to move on and get over it. But their inner drives took all that crap from all those ridiculous voices and said, you are wrong. I do have value. I am a champion. You know what? The Eagles were right. The Eagles were right. And we love them, not just for being champions, but for proving the naysayers hugely, embarrassingly wrong. Fly, Eagles fly.
All right, so I enjoyed that, right? Can I criticize it a little bit? You know I got to, right?
Why?
Yo, the end could have been a little bit better. I mean, he ended with the fly Eagles fly, right? But he ain't had that mic drop moment. Like you had a chance to have that mic drop moment, and you just kind of softened up on it. I'm just saying, like you had a chance. You had a chance. You had a chance. I appreciate what you said, though. I forgot his name. I appreciate what you said. Go Birds and all that good stuff.
Jake Tapper.
Jake Tapper, thank you. I enjoy watching Jake Tapper on CNN. Didn't know he's an Eagles fan though until now.
He's from Philly.
Even better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was expecting to end it with that. Take that. And
I mean, he had a couple of those moments. I mean, he had receipts. He had a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like you did all that
Mm-hmm.
to end it like, thank you very much. Good night. Like that was this ending. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Good night. I'm just saying. Anyway, we're going to get up out of here. Any last words, Miguel?
Fly Eagles fly.
Fly Eagles fly. And we got to figure out what we were talking about next week because ain't no football. No football to talk about at all whatsoever. Is what it is. All right, we're going to get up out of here. We appreciate y'all hanging with us here on the CheckSwing Podcast with myself and with my man, Coach Santa in the building. And we're going to get up out of here. We'll talk to y'all next week. Make sure y'all check us out on Sunday here on New Twist Radio as we will be reading your 10-7 letters all episode long. Your dear 10-7 letters all episode long. And so make sure you check us out on Sunday. And then, of course, make sure you check out last week's show as we had a couple special guests. I'm not going to name any names, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, but I'm not going to name any names. But we had a couple special guests on last week's show. So thank you. And, check that out. And Dara says, thank you, Uncle Carlos. Carlos.
Baseball been very, very good to me.
We out of here. We talk to y'all next week, man. Peace.